We provide you with the lowest per GB rates, night or day. SLT 4G, driving you ever forward.
Tonight, a milestone. President Maithripala Sirisena completes 4 years in office. Bad example. Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe says that the conduct of Sri Lanka's parliament is not a good example anymore. Caution. Opposition leader Mahinda Rajapaksa says the 19th Amendment is breaking down the entire government mechanism. Investigation period. ICC gives 2 weeks amnesty period for Sri Lankan cricketers and others involved in the game to come clean and tell them what they know about corruption. All that and much more coming up tonight, Wednesday, the 9th of January 2019.
මේ උත්සව සමයේ ස්මාර්ට් ඇන්ඩ්‍රොයිඩ් තාක්ෂණයෙන් එන සිංහ විස්ටා TV එකක් මිලදී ගන්නා ඔබට හිත පිරෙන්න වාසි රැසක් ඕනෑම සිංහ ප්‍රදර්ශනාගාරයකින්.
From Ada Derana, this is Ada Derana First at 9 with Ndivari Amuata and Mahesh Jani. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
A very good evening and a warm welcome to First at 9 on Sri Lanka's news channel Ada Derana 24. Good evening, Mahesh. A warm welcome to you too.
Good evening, Indivari. Now, the story which we did yesterday about the pre-menstrual syndrome, it has been getting a lot of comments about it, and yeah, indeed, and we've been getting a lot of feedback saying that it was nice that we brought this topic into the limelight and had a positive discussion on this.
Certainly. Like I said yesterday, these are taboo topics. We need to break it. And topics is these are emotional and physical symptoms that women go through. And there are so many underreported stories affecting women and girls. Let's empower them so that they would positively contribute to the society and eventually to the economy. But tonight we have a lot of stories. We start off with our top story. 4 years ago, to date, became a significant day in the political sphere of the island. A concept called common candidate, which was not so common at the time, was at the heart of it. And its protagonist was President Maithripala Sirisena.
Indeed. Now, on the 9th of January in 2015, he became the 6th executive president of Sri Lanka. President Sirisena, the then common candidate, contested the presidential election, bringing together the 2 major political parties in the country, the Sri Lanka Freedom Party and the United National Party, which are known for their divergent ideologies and formed a unity government. Things may have soared between the head of state and the UNP since, but his historic election as the head of state warrants a look back at his journey.
Maithripala Sirisena joined mainstream politics in 1989 as a member of the Parliament of Sri Lanka from the Sri Lanka Freedom Party and held several ministries since 1994. He was appointed the General Secretary of the SLFP and was Minister of Health until November 2014, when he announced his candidacy for the 2015 presidential election as the opposition coalition's common candidate. He withdrew from the existing government of the then President Mahinda Rajapaksa, vowing to eradicate corruption and establish good governance. After winning the 2015 presidential election with 6.2 million votes, Maithripala Sirisena took office as the 6th executive president of Sri Lanka 4 years ago on a day like today. Following his appointment as the president, Maithripala Sirisena, within the last 4 years, introduced the 19th Amendment to the Constitution, pruning some powers of the executive presidency and vesting many with the legislature. He also reconstituted the Constitutional Council, through which various independent commissions were either established or revived. Among them are the Election Commission, Public Service Commission, National Police Commission, Audit Service Commission, Commission to investigate allegations of bribery or corruption, as well as the Finance Commission. President Maithripala Sirisena also brought in the Right to Information Act, which was a promise made in his election manifesto. Moragahakanda Kaluganga project, which is considered to be one of the biggest irrigation projects in Sri Lanka, was also declared open by President Sirisena.
Now, a total of 3 Supreme Court judges and a new Court of Appeal judge have taken oaths before President Maithripala Sirisena today. Accordingly, former President of the Court of Appeal, Justice Preeti Padman Surasena, and Judges S. Thurai Raja and Ega Amarsekara have been sworn in as Supreme Court judges. The President's Media Division added that Judge K.P. Fernando was sworn in as a Court of Appeal judge before the head of state. The appointments were made following the approval of the Constitutional Council, which convened under the auspices of Speaker Karu Jayasuriya on Monday and approved the 4 appointments.
Opposition leader Mahinda Rajapaksa today took aim at the present government, charging that the country is now faced with 3 major dangers consequent to the changes in regime in 2015. Sri Lanka's economy, which most highlight to be in peril, as a concern highlighted by the opposition leader, warning that it could collapse at any moment. The 19th Amendment to the Constitution, along with the proposed new Constitution itself, also drew the former president's scorn, as pointed them out as remaining dangers faced by the country. Heralding these warnings, the opposition leader called on the public to back the opposition led by him to prevent these dangers highlighted by him from coming to fruition.
Opposition leader Mahinda Rajapaksa says that the country is facing 3 major dangers since the change of government on the 9th of January in 2015. He highlighted the first danger to be the collapse of the country's economy at any moment. He alleges that the United National Party-led government borrowed the equivalent of more than 50% of the total national debt that was outstanding as at the end of December 2014 from the loans taken in the 6 decades after gaining independence in 1948. As the second danger, the opposition leader alleges the entire governmental mechanism is breaking down due to the 19th Amendment to the Constitution. He says that under the provisions of the 19th Amendment, Parliament cannot be dissolved under any circumstances, even in the event of a government repeatedly losing votes on the budget, the statement of government policy, or no confidence motions. Opposition leader Rajapaksa goes on to say that even though the president is now prohibited from calling a general election to seek the people's mandate, the 19th Amendment itself has placed the responsibility of forming governments with the MPs in Parliament and taking the country forward entirely on the same president. Giving clarity to the resulting consequences, he says that the president continues to be the head of the government and the head of the cabinet, whilst being responsible for everything done by such a government. The proposed new constitution is what opposition leader Mahinda Rajapaksa pointed to as the 3rd danger facing the country. He alleges that the government seeks to divide the country into 9 semi-independent federal units through that constitution. Furthermore, that provisions have been introduced to weaken the central parliament and the legal framework in such a manner as to make it impossible for the central government to respond adequately to an emergency in order to safeguard the peace and integrity of the country. The opposition leader also pointed the finger at those who prepared the draft constitution, saying that it was the same people who drafted the completely confusing 19th Amendment to the Constitution.
Recent activities in the Sri Lankan Parliament, owing largely to the behaviour of its members, drew an unusual amount of scrutiny both here in the country as well as abroad. Although there were allegations that foreign interests were largely owing to various insidious agendas, the action of parliamentarians in the House were widely criticised, especially clashes between MPs. Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe, who was briefly in the opposition when the saga unfolded in Parliament, laments the loss of opportunity for the country's legislative body to be exemplary. Addressing a ceremony today, the Premier said questionable actions of parliamentarians have forfeited their right to give advice. Highlighting foreign mechanisms, he even suggested political ethics being enforced by law.
The 75th anniversary of Karandiniya Central College in Galle was celebrated under the patronage of Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe today. The Premier vested a newly built 3-storied building with the students of the school and felicitated those who excelled in various streams. I'm ashamed to say that our parliament is not an example to anyone anymore. We lost the opportunity to be exemplary through our own behaviour. We shouldn't cover up those incidents, but we have to think as to how we can be an example to the country. How can I come here and ask you as to what is the right thing to be done? As a result, today I'm not in a position to advise you. Although I'm not involved in those incidents, I am still a member of that institution. If public representatives have faults, they should be discussed, and if not, democratic politics will be destroyed. Today, in some countries, political ethics are written into law. There are commissioners to observe parliamentarians and prepare reports. A number of MPs in England were thus noticed to have breached them. They even investigate monetary transactions. We have to take tough action pertaining to Sri Lankan Parliament as well, because if not, it affects the country.
Now, in the elections has been a topic that has been discussed always in the political sphere in Sri Lanka. The delay in holding provincial council elections has been a popular topic for politicians since last year. Now, in this backdrop, the leader of the House, Minister Lakshman Kiriyalla, revealed in Parliament today that there had been an unofficial agreement to hold the provincial council election under the previous electoral system.
The opposition leader, however, accused that the government deliberately postponed the submission of the delimitation report to the president in an attempt to postpone elections.
The Parliament is yet to receive the delimitation report. They haven't even sent it to the President. As per law, either the Speaker or Prime Minister must send this report to the President after 2 months in order to hold the Provincial Council and the local authorities elections. Speaker and the Prime Minister's committee had violated a law passed by the Parliament. What we need is an election, so when will you send this report to the President?
මේ පිළිබඳව ගරු කතානායකතුමා නැවත පැමිණි අවස්ථාවේදී එතුමාට මම දැනුවත් කරන්නම් ඒ කාරණේ අවශ්‍ය කටයුතු සිදු කරන වැඩපිළිවෙල හරියට. දැන් ඔබතුමා සම්පූර්ණ කතානායකතුමාගේ වගකීම දරන නියෝජ්‍ය කතානායකතුමා විදියට. අද ඔබතුමා තමයි කතානායකවරයා. ඒක වහාම මේ වාතාව ඒ කමිටුවේ සභාපතිතුමා ජනාධිපතිතුමාට යවන්න ඕනේ කියන එක තමයි මා දැනුවත් වෙලා තියෙන්නේ.
කමිටුව විසින් මාස දෙකක් ඇතුළත යවන්න.
As per law, the committee must send the report to the President after 2 months. The Prime Minister must give reasons if that law has been violated. This issue was brought up in the party leaders' meeting earlier, so we will take further necessary steps. The delimitation committee must be held responsible for not sending the report in 2 months. Had the report been passed earlier on, we could have held elections by now. But both of these parties opposed to the report then, even when they knew that elections will be delayed. During the party leaders' meeting, we unofficially agreed to hold the election under the old electoral system. Minister Nimal Siripal de Silva said during the meeting that we will be able to hold the election if we go for the old system.
Well, as we all know, 2019 is an election year and the government is yet to even give a clue as to when the polls, which are already overdue, will be held. It is in this backdrop that we saw several opposition parliamentarians and even ministers claiming that a presidential election will be held before any other election. However, Sri Lanka Freedom Party seems to be at odds with these views. Spokesperson for the party, MP Mahinda Samarasinghe, today said that President Maithripala Sirisena is in no hurry to hold a presidential election. Ahead of schedule, Samarasinghe also moved to absolve the president of any responsibility in delaying the provincial council polls.
His failure to expedite the process of conducting local provincial council elections.
You can't blame the president for that. That is the job for the parliament. SLFP position is very clearly that we don't want the elections postponed. Even now it's too late. We want it held immediately. But the legislative measures will have to be taken to enable it to be held soon.
President is in no hurry to hold the presidential election. He mentioned this in his speech yesterday that he has so much left to do. We have held many discussions on contesting the general election under a common party symbol. We will continue with these discussions.
මගේ නම් විශ්වාසයක් තියෙනවා එහෙම දෙයක් වෙන්නේ නැහැ කියලා.
I'm sure nothing of the sort will happen because we're now working hand in hand. In order to become the president, you must have over 50%, and no one won that during the local authorities election. Even the SLPP got only 42%, and we got almost 15%. It is by combining the two that we will be able to reach the 50% mark.
He
hasn't talked about his decision yet and has informed us that he will let us know of his decision in time. But it is the SLFP's unanimous stance to nominate him as our presidential candidate. As for the numbers that we have, if both parties do nominate him, there is no question that he will win the election.
The Sri Lanka Army has appointed Major General Shavendra Silva as its new Chief of Staff. Major General Silva is currently serving as the Adjutant General of the Army, and he was the youngest promoted as a commanding officer. He was also the Army's former Director of Operations and the General Officer commanding 58th Division during the war. The Major General received some of the highest honours in the Sri Lanka Armed Forces, which include medals Veera Vikrama Vibhushana, Rana Vikrama, Uttama Seva and the Rana Surat once, which is the first in the Sri Lanka military history.
Also, in other local stories we have for you tonight, the Colombo Food Magistrates Court reissued an open warrant on former Sri Lankan ambassador to the United States, Jali Wickramasuriya. Wickramasuriya is charged with allegedly accepting a commission of $332,000 following a contract awarded to refurbish the Sri Lankan embassy in Washington, D.C. while serving as the ambassador to the U.S. under the previous government. The court issued open warrants on a number of previous occasions against the former diplomat, who has been absconding since being allowed to travel abroad in July of 2017.
And a carbon tax is imposed on all vehicles except electric vehicles with effect from the 1st of January this year. Commissioner General of the Department of Motor Traffic, Jagat Chandrasuri, said today that the tax will be based on the fuel consumption of vehicles. The Commissioner has said that the year of manufacture of vehicles with less than 5 years, between 5 and 10 years, and more than 10 years will be taken into consideration. Accordingly, hybrid vehicles using petrol or diesel with a manufacturing date of less than 5 years will be charged 25% for 1 cubic centimetre as per the engine capacity, while vehicles with a manufacture date between 5 and 10 years will be charged 50%. Vehicles with a date of manufacturing exceeding 10 years will be charged 1 rupee each. These taxes will be charged through Provincial Commissioners of Department of Motor Traffic when obtaining revenue licenses. However, Commissioner General Chandrasuri noted that the new tax will not be compulsory for this year, but will be a must from year 2020.
Well, business news is on the other side of this break. Stay with First at 9.
You are watching Sri Lanka's #1 news channel, Other Derana 24/7.
Welcome back, everyone. Let's take a look at business news now. The Reserve Bank of India has agreed to provide $400 million to the Central Bank of Sri Lanka under its the SARC swap facility. The central bank also announced that it has requested a further bilateral swap arrangement of $1 billion between the RBI and the CBSL, which is under consideration.
Now, the central bank says that the assistance of the RBI is intended to boost investor confidence by supporting Sri Lanka to maintain an adequate level of external reserves while accommodating outflows related to imports due to debt servicing and, if necessary, support for the currency to avoid disorderly adjustment with the end of the delays related to the political developments in the country. The government and the central bank have also already reviewed action to issue international sovereign bonds. obtain term loans and negotiate credit lanes through the state banks on behalf of the government. It is expected that these operations will be completed in the first quarter of this year. In addition, Minister of Finance Mangala Samaravira will be visiting Washington to resume negotiations with the IMF on the extended fund facility on the 14th of this month.
Now, the World Bank is warning of increasing risk, or what it's called darkening skies, for the world economy as its annual assessment of global prospects predicted continued through somewhat slower growth this year and next. The bank forecast for the global economy is expansion this year of 2.9% and 2.8% in 2020.
Now, the predicted slowdown, Mahesh, is focused on the rich countries, particularly in the United States, although it will continue to expand more rapidly than either the Eurozone or Japan in Asia. On the other hand, growth in emerging markets and developing economies is likely to gather pace somewhat, despite the continued cooling down in China, a process which began at the start of the decade.
By 2021, growth in China is expected to be 6%, which is still pretty strong, but it is a marked change of gear for an economy that expands by an average of 10% annually between 1980 and 2010.
But for Sri Lanka, the World Bank predicts that growth will lag behind other countries in South Asia, except Afghanistan, of course, highlighting that political uncertainty is a key risk.
Issuing its annual flagship report for 2019, Global Economic Prospects, Darkening Skies, the World Bank says Sri Lanka's economy grew 3.9% in 2018 on the back of a recovery in the agriculture and services sectors, adding that this recovery from adverse weather conditions is expected to continue into 2019. The multilateral bank estimates Sri Lanka's annual GDP growth at a slow 4% in 2019 and 4.1% in 2020. That makes it the slowest growing country in South Asia after Afghanistan, which will grow at 3.2% annually during this period. Pakistan will grow at 4.8% annually over 2020 to 2021, Maldives at 5.6%, Bhutan at 6.4%, Bangladesh at 6.8%, with India leading the pack at 7.5%. The World Bank, meanwhile, also warns against external vulnerabilities rising in the region, including a further deterioration in current accounts and a faster-than-expected tightening of global financing conditions. The World Bank says that South Asian economies have high levels of public debt in general, and fiscal slippages could further worsen already precarious public debt positions and result in a costly rise in already elevated interest payments. The bank said, in Sri Lanka, external debt is sizable and current account deficits have deteriorated considerably. Upcoming election cycles in the region are expected to elevate political uncertainty, and the report added that the challenging political environment could adversely affect the ongoing reform agendas and economic activity in some countries like Afghanistan and Sri Lanka.
Well, in markets, investor sentiment seemed to be dented in Sri Lanka due to prolonged political uncertainty, dragging the benchmark Colombo stock market index down to a more than 6-week low. The all-share price index today fell 0.1% to end at 5,982.19, its lowest close since the 27th of November. Turnover was just 216.4 million rupees, nearly a quarter of last year's daily average of 834 million rupees. Foreigners continued to be sellers with net outflow of some 4.3 million rupees worth of shares. We have a brief report on today's market performance on the other side.
In the bond market, yield curve continued to remain broadly steady as market participants were remaining on the sideline, adopting a wait-and-see approach ahead of the Friday's bond auction. At the today's primary bill auction, yields of 6 months and 1 year dipped by 1 basis points and 14 basis points to be accepted at weighted average of 9.94% and 10.85% respectively. In the equity market, both continue to end in red for the third consecutive day, recording the lowest since November 2018 due to Browns and SRT.
World stocks extended their gains to hit a near 4-week high, and oil prices rose on optimism that the United States and China may be inching towards a trade deal, soothing fears of an all-out trade war. In Beijing today, Chinese and U.S. teams ended trade talks that lasted longer than expected, and officials said details will be released soon, raising hopes that the world's two largest economies would resolve their trade standoff, thereby avoiding disruption to the global economy. Now, share prices jumped in Asia, and markets in Europe and the United States were expected to follow suit as the talks were extended into an unscheduled third day, showing both sides were very serious. Oil prices climbed 2% in the 8-day of gains today. U.S. West Texas immediate crude oil futures soared more than 20% since hitting an 18-month low in late December and have now broken through $50 per barrel overnight for the first time in 2019. International Brent crude futures were up 1.94% at $59.86 per barrel. In currency markets, the dollar index softened to 95.835 against a basket of currencies again after flirting in early trading with a 2.5-month low hit on Monday.
And the Sri Lankan rupee closed higher today as foreign banks sold dollars amid political uncertainty. The rupee ended at 182.25 to 40 today, compared with 182.50 to 70 in the previous session. It seems that the local currency has only mildly recovered from its all-time low of 183 against the dollar hit last week. And now let's take a look at how the Sri Lankan rupee traded against other major currencies during the day. Do stay with us. We'll be back with your international news after this short commercial break on First at 9.
You are watching Sri Lanka's award-winning news channel, Other Derana 24/7.
Welcome back. You're joining First at 9 on Other Derana 24.
Moving on to international news now, U.S. President Donald Trump made his first television address to the nation from the Oval Office, escalating a standoff with Congress that has led to an 18-day partial government shutdown. The U.S. president insisted on funding for his long-promised border wall with Mexico, but he did not declare an emergency that would enable him to bypass the lower house of Congress, now controlled by the opposition Democrats. The ongoing closure of a quarter of federal agencies in the second longest in history, leaving hundreds of thousands of government workers unpaid.
Every day, Customs and Border Patrol agents encounter thousands of illegal immigrants trying to enter our country. We are out of space to hold them, and we have no way to promptly return them back home to their country. All Americans are hurt by uncontrolled illegal migration. It strains public resources and drives down jobs and wages. Among those hardest hit are African Americans and Hispanic Americans. Our southern border is a pipeline for vast quantities of illegal drugs. Last month, 20,000 migrant children were illegally brought into the United States, a dramatic increase. These children are used as human pawns by vicious coyotes and ruthless gangs. Finally, as part of an overall approach to border security, law enforcement professionals have requested $5.7 billion for a physical barrier. At the request of Democrats, it will be a steel barrier rather than a concrete wall. The federal government remains shut down for one reason, and one reason only: because Democrats will not fund border security.
Sports news now. Now, Sri Lanka's on-field misfortunes is no secret with the loss of the Test and One-Day series against New Zealand in recent days. No, the matters are compounded by another revelation by the ICC, which was brought to light by Minister of Sports Harin Fernando today.
Well, quoting the ICC, the Minister of Sports said that the ICC sees the island nation as the most corrupt among cricket-playing nations. And the ICC Anti-Corruption Unit's coordinator of investigations, Steve Richardson, announced that the 2-week amnesty period is granted for Sri Lankan cricketers and others involved in the game to come clean about what they know.
Now, yesterday, the ICC announced that the United States of America has become the 105th member of the international cricketing body, with Sri Lanka being one of the oldest members in comparison and having an epoch-defining characters represent the country. The corruption allegations leveled against Sri Lanka are truly tragic.
A special discussion over corruption in Sri Lanka cricket took place today, which was attended by Minister of Sports Harin Fernando, ICC Anti-Corruption Unit's Coordinator of Investigations Steve Richardson, cricketers and other stakeholders. It was held at the Ministry of Sports in Colombo.
One of the things that we will be doing next week and announcing next week is that there will be an amnesty for cricketers and people who work in cricket, so the people in this room, to come forward and tell us in the ICC what they know about corruption in cricket. Let me make this clear, however. This is not an amnesty for people who have engaged in corrupt conduct, people who have match fixed. This is for people who have been approached and have turned it down but haven't reported it.
ICC has levelled a serious allegation against us. When I visited the ICC recently, they told me that ICC sees Sri Lanka as the most corrupt cricket-playing country. However, the ICC has decided to give the SLC an amnesty period of 2 weeks, and during that period, an office of ICC will be functioning here. Therefore, you are free to reveal what happened. The ICC also told me that than the issue of betting centres, Sri Lanka cricket has connections with the underworld.
And we have Manusha Jayathilaka at the Other Derana Weather Centre with your forecast first evening edition.
A very good evening, everyone, and welcome to Forecast First. Let's first take a look at your temperatures for the next 24 hours now. The western, northwestern and southern provinces are going to have very warm temperatures during the day tomorrow, with Puttlam district expected to have the highest temperature of 31 degrees Celsius during its peak hours. Now, the central hills will of course have the lowest temperature at a very cool 18 degrees Celsius. Moving on to a rain forecast now, there's going to be a low precipitation zone in the central hills during the afternoon hours, which will gradually dissipate during the evening. And interestingly, there's going to be very favorable sunny weather conditions in the upper regions of the country tomorrow, while the lower regions of the country are going to have showers and thunder showers, including in the western, southern and central provinces. That's all that we have from the Weather Centre tonight. Here's a look at your city-by-city weather forecast for the next 24 hours.
That wraps up tonight's edition of First at 9. If you did miss any of our stories, you could log on to www.otherderana.lk or follow us on our social media sites, and you can have a replay of the entire news bulletin on our YouTube page as well. I'm Indiveri Amwatha. Thank you for joining us.
And I'm Mahesh Johnny. Thank you very much for joining us. Good night.